Hey everyone, Ryan Young, Kama Jiu-Jitsu, and I hope you're doing well. So one of the things that Jiu-Jitsu is great for, it's getting yourself in shape. So now there are two ways, or two things that you need to get yourself in shape. You need to have a correct diet, and you also need to have the exercise and the movements to spark it. So most people think that exercise is the most important thing, when it's really not. The most important thing is your diet. You have to think of your diet as a fuel and the exercise as a spark. I mean, if you just have a lighter with no fuel and you just flip, it'll spark, but nothing will happen. You need fuel in there to keep it going. So you need both, but in my opinion, the diet is more important because you can eat very healthily, is that a word? Healthily? And not do any exercise, and you'll live longer than if you eat like crap and do a ton of exercise. What you need to do is you need to find that happy balance between the two of them. And Jiu-Jitsu is very good. Let's say that again. Jiu-Jitsu is very good for the spark portion, in that it gets you in shape, it gets your body moving in the movements that it needs to be moved in, while at the same time teaching you a great skill. But you need to do the diet, and you'll find that out soon enough. So if you train just for a little bit and you realize that, let's say you have a life habit that is not conducive to doing well in Jiu-Jitsu, and that could be smoking, drinking, and just eating a lot of junk food. You'll feel like crap. You may pick up some skills, but you'll find that you'll have zero stamina and you feel sick all the time. Or if you smoke, you'll be short of breath all the time, and you'll be figuring, what can I do to help? So a lot of people, when they do Jiu-Jitsu, they eventually become healthy. And a lot of the reason is because they want to do better in Jiu-Jitsu. And to do better, you need to have an optimal body. And to have an optimal body, it's not just the exercise, you need to have the diet as well. So one of the things that we need to do is, if we come into Jiu-Jitsu, a lot of times we come in overweight. Or let's just be frank about it. We come in fat and overweight. What we essentially do is we come into Jiu-Jitsu thinking, okay, this is gonna help us. And it does. But then you also realize that you need to do the diet part as well. So the Gracies have their Gracie Diet. And the Gracie Diet, a lot of the diet is fruit. But I think the primary thing for them is proper combinations. And combinations in their view, because eating is a chemical reaction, or rather the digestion is a chemical reaction, and that's really all it is. I mean, it's just taking things through your digestive tract and absorbing what your body can use, and then use it to fuel your muscles. A lot of people will say, that Gracie Diet is heavy on sugar, that's so bad. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's heavy on sugar, because I remember when just one meal I'm thinking of that Horian Gracie taught me years ago was watermelon juice that was run through a champion juicer, combined with cream cheese in a blender. So you have some sugar and you have some fat. And they would eat a lot of cream cheese. Cream cheese and jack cheese, I think, were the two favorite cheeses I'd see them eat. And I remember going over to Helson Gracie's house, and he would make a meal of pears and cream cheese. So he would get D'Anjou pears and peel them, and then slice them up, and he'd probably eat about 4 or 5 pears. And then he'd have a whole block of cream cheese, and that would be his meal. So you get a lot of sugar combined with a lot of fat. I didn't see them eat a lot of protein. For instance, I take it back. I mean, I saw Helson eating meat. I mean, he had that little smoky grill, that little Weber, and he would have a roast on it, and he would just have it cooking for hours. And he would cut a piece off of it, and he would eat it, cut a piece. And I remember going to his house, and that's what he had going on, and we just kind of sat and ate. They do have them, but that's all he ate. He didn't eat anything else, just the meat. So I know one of the things they do is they don't combine their carbs together, and they have a lot of fruit. And they'll just make a meal, like a melon, I think, is just an entire meal. They'll just eat watermelon with a neutral thing. I think cream cheese or a fat is a neutral for them, so they'll go and do that. Now for me, I've done that a lot, and it's done well for me. But now that I'm 50, at least for me, the way that I eat has not necessarily been the best for me. Now, as an example, my mom died of pancreatic cancer. The way they found that out was actually through an insurance company. I was trying to get an insurance policy done on her, and for a long-term care policy, and the insurance company that I was the agent on came back to me and said, we need your mom to do one more particular test, which is very unusual. I'm like, why? And they said, well, we just need to run another test. So they ran the test, and after that test, they called me and they said, you know what, we're gonna have to issue a deny. We're not gonna insure her at all. And I'm like, why? They said, well, here's a hint. Call your mom, tell her to go see a doctor right away. So she went to go see a doctor right away. It turns out she had pancreatic cancer. And what happened was they did an A1C test on her, and they found she had elevated blood sugars, which meant that either she was type 2 diabetic based on the test, or she had pancreatic cancer because her pancreas wasn't working, producing insulin for her. And it turns out to be the latter. In the last year or so, I go see my doctor regularly to get some blood tests done and get some blood work, and he had come back to me about a year and a half ago and said, "Hey Ryan, your A1C levels put you at a pre-diabetic level." So I think that meant I had an A1C of 6, which is high. I think another 0.2 or 0.3 would then put me into type 2 diabetic. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm not even in the risk category to be a type 2 diabetic, right? I'm not overweight, I'm not fat, and I don't eat a lot of candy. After I kept trying to fix it, change a little thing here and there, do what I think was right, cut back on refined sugars and all, it didn't help. It was weird, it didn't help at all. So my doctor told me, all right, you're gonna have to go see a dietitian. So I did. The dietitian didn't tell me anything I didn't know. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm doing this already. What you're telling me is not making any difference. So after about a year, the doctor tells me, all right, since we've had a few blood tests already and things haven't changed, I'm gonna start putting you on some medication. And I said, no, let me try one more time. So what I did was I tried something which was novel to me, but apparently is not, and I started fasting. If you look back at it, at that time I was about 170 pounds. I wasn't fat, I wasn't skinny, but I wasn't fat. At 170 pounds, and since I moved to Texas, by then, about maybe after 3.5, 4 years, I had gained about 15 or 20 pounds. I moved to Texas at about 150 pounds, and at that time I was 170. So I thought, let me just go and fast. Let me just try this fasting. So what I did was I did that. I did maybe a 1 day, and then maybe 2 weeks later I did a 2 day, and a couple of weeks later I did a 3-day fast. And I did that over the course of about, I did that numerous times over the course of about 3 months. When I got a blood test again, and my A1C came down to about 5.7, which then put me, I guess, high normal, but not pre-diabetic range anymore. So the doctor asked, "What did you do?" I said, "I just fasted." That actually helped. And I do an intermittent fast every day anyway, which means I don't eat anything until after 12. What they say, you have breakfast, break fast, your breakfast is your first meal after fasting. Believe it or not, we all fast every day. When you sleep, let's say you sleep for 8 hours, you just fasted for 8 hours. Let's say you eat dinner at 6 p.m., you don't eat again, and you go to sleep and you wake up at 6 a.m. and that's when you have breakfast. You just did a 12-hour fast. So you broke your fast, you had your breakfast. So all I do, I break my fast, I have my breakfast at about noon, which is when everybody typically has their lunch, but that's my breakfast. So that's when I break my fast, and then I usually eat late at night because I finish teaching anywhere from 8 to 10:30 at night. And then I go home, shower, and then I eat something, and then I go to sleep. My window of eating typically is from about 1 p.m. until about 11 or 12 midnight that night. So I usually have about a 10 to 11 hour feeding window. That's what I do on a normal basis. I just have water and coffee in the morning. So what I do periodically, I do these fasts, and I would just do 1 day. So today is Wednesday, and from Sunday night until, I guess, Tuesday afternoon, I did a 40-hour fast. Maybe next week, from Sunday night again, I'll have my last meal Sunday, and I probably won't eat, for at least another 2 days, maybe 3 days. If you have body fat to lose, then you can do that. So one of the concerns, and I'm no expert on this, but here's the way I understand it, and some of you can kind of chime in and you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong. If you go on a fast, your body will burn glucose, which is in your muscles and in your liver. And it takes about a day and a half, maybe 2 days to burn through all of it. And once you burn through all of it, then your body has to look for an alternate source. Well, you've got all this fat in your body, and your body will go, oh, okay, well, you've got more sources of energy in fat. We'll just create the ketone bodies to then put you into a state called ketosis, in which now you're burning fat. Now, it's easiest to do that in the fast because you're not feeding any more sugar to your body. So one of the problems that all of us have is that we have excess fat in our body, because what happens when we eat, we create an insulin response, meaning the body then sees glucose in our bloodstream, and then it has to keep it at a certain level and no higher. And then what it does is it sends the insulin in to take all the excess out of our bloodstream, and then what it does is it puts it in the liver. Well, what if the liver's full? Then what it does is then it has to create and turn into fat. So then from there, the fat goes all over. It could be in your liver, it could be in your eyes, which is why you have people who are type 2 diabetic. They get liver problems, they get kidney problems, they get eye problems, they get gangrene in their feet, and all kind of bad stuff that happens because the fat gets put all over the place. Put all that body fat. Now here's the way I like to explain it to people. That fat is the same thing as, let's say you have your immediate food in your fridge and in your pantry. right? That's the food, that's essentially your glycogen stores in your muscles, which is the fridge, the immediate source, and in your pantry, which is your secondary source. Once your fridge and your pantry are full, but you keep taking food in, meaning you keep going to the grocery store, keep buying food, where are you gonna put it, right? Same thing as your muscles and your liver are full of glycogen already. It has enough energy for you to have for the time being. But because we're on a 3, 4, 5, 6 meal a day schedule these days, you take in more food than you need. So because of that, now you've got glycogen running around and there's nowhere to put it because your muscles and your liver are full. So your body then sends the insulin in to take the excess out and then store it as fat. It converts it to fat and stores it. So in the house example, once your fridge and your pantry are full, then it starts storing some food all over the counters. And once the counters are full of food, then it starts going into the den, if you have one. And now you have food stored in your den. Once the den is full, it starts going to the guest room. Once the guest room is full, it goes to the living room. Once the living room is full, it goes to your bedroom. Next thing you know, you have food stored all over the place in your house. It's just all over, right? All that food stored all over your house and all the different rooms and all the extra spaces in your room is the same thing as fat on your body. And then more fat, and then more fat. And eventually it gets to the point where you can't store anymore and you're just full. And that's where you start triggering health crises. And that's where, you have no more house. You can't live anywhere, right? Because you have no more room because it's just full of food. So what you do is you go on a fast. You go on a fast and first thing you do is you're gonna run into the refrigerator, eat what's in the refrigerator. Okay, refrigerator's gone. So you go to the pantry. You're gonna empty out the pantry. And now you're going, okay, now my muscles, refrigerator, and my liver, pantry, are empty. No more glycogen in there. Now I need to go and find some more food. So being that there's no more food coming in from grocery stores because you stopped shopping, meaning you stopped eating, you now have to look around the house and look for food. So you go to the counters, oh, there's some food over there. So you're going to eat that, you consume that. Well, guess what? You just peeled off some of that body fat from your body. So let's say that was a 2-day fast, right? It took you 2 days to run through your refrigerator, your pantry, and the food in your kitchen counter. And then what do? We still all got all that food stored all over our house, meaning we still have all that fat on our bodies. We go and grab a meal, we eat something. Okay, well, we replenish the refrigerator, we replenish our pantry, and then what do? We then go to the store, buy some more food, and now we have more food, meaning you eat, you refill your muscles and your liver. A few hours later, you're just starting to work through that, and what do? You go to get another meal. You go to Sonic, grab a burger, whatever, and then you fill yourself up again. But the longer you fast, the more you're gonna grab all that food out of the den, out of the guest room, out of the bedrooms, out of the living room, wherever you have food. That's why when you fast, you don't starve. As long as you have food, as long as you have fat there to burn, you will burn it. Your body will burn it because it's in that process of looking for food all over the place. But what we don't do is we don't give ourselves a chance to do it. Now it's perfectly natural to not eat, perfectly natural. In fact, there's a guy who's from Scotland, I think, who holds a Guinness Book of World Records for a number of days fasted. I think he went 380 days without eating a single meal. He just had black coffee and black tea and water. And he didn't eat for all that time. And he was fine. And he was, I think, 450 pounds. And by the time he was done, he was like 190 pounds and he lived to like 94 years old. And what happened was he just went through and just ate all the stores of food all over his house, meaning all his body. He did that until he could no longer do it. And at that point, he just maintained a regular lifestyle at that point. And he probably did regular fast as well. Now, one of the things we have to kind of realize is that our body doesn't need to take in glucose because we can manufacture it. It's something that's an essential thing. Like you have essential amino acids, which are proteins that we cannot manufacture on our own, so we need to go and get it from outside food sources. What we do is, if you fast, you can use that to make sure that you eat all the different energy stores. Another thing that I learned was that when you take in a meal and you're full, your body can lose up to 2/3 of your blood supply and your oxygen that goes with it, the oxygenated blood. You can lose 2/3 of your blood supply, the oxygenated blood, to digest your food. That's why, when I'm in a fasted state, so let's say I haven't eaten from dinner, and here I am about lunchtime, and during the summer when I'd be out with my daughter everywhere, she's not fasting. I don't want her to fast. She's still growing. So I'd always make sure that she has food. Sometimes I would eat, sometimes I wouldn't. But inevitably, there'd be that day where I got to get a lot of stuff done. Whatever she's eating is so good, so I go and order some for myself. So I eat, and after I eat, I'm just like this. I'm tired, and we're driving, and I don't feel like doing anything. So guess what? I end up heading back to the house, and I got to take a nap. So I waste my whole afternoon. and it was because I ate something. The thing is, when you're fasting, your body's kind of in an alert state. Now, why is it in an alert state when you're fasting? It's because if you really think about it, we're not meant to really eat 3 meals a day. We're meant to feed for a period of time, and then we have to go find some more food, right? So if we were still hunting, we'd hunt, we'd get an animal, and we'd gorge on food. Just eat and eat and eat, and then the food's gone. Because back then, let's say there's no refrigeration, no way to preserve our food. So you just eat and eat and eat. And after you eat, you're gorged. You're like, oh, okay, I can't eat for a while. Food coma, right? And then after a few days, you start to think, okay, I'm hungry. I better go find something to eat. And then you want to find something to eat. But the thing is, if God made it to where we would be, you know, a lot of people say, oh, I have no energy when I eat. You know, that's really a lie. It's psychological, because when we're in that state, our body actually starts to secrete adrenaline and other types of things that makes us actually get hopped up. And that's why you're actually more alert, because in that state, you have to go look for food. If we were such that we would lose energy when we wouldn't have food, and we wouldn't have a meal, then we would all die off. We wouldn't be able to go find food because we're dying of starvation. Well, that's not true, right? You get fat, and as you get fat, then you use that food, that food that you've eaten, the fat that you've stored, as energy to go look for more food. So if we kind of think of it to today, we don't need to eat as often as we do. In fact, most of us, you know, they say the average person is overweight, and a good chunk of our population is obese, and another chunk is morbidly obese. So a lot of it has to do with the amount of sugars and processed foods that we eat. So one of the things about sugar is that sugar is really the cause of what makes you fat, not fat. Eat fat, but don't eat sugar. Another thing of my blood work that I was mentioning earlier was that my blood work said that I had a high cholesterol. I want to say like over 220. And it happened for about 3 blood tests in a row. My doctor kind of pointed out, you know, I got to put you on cholesterol meds. So finally I said, look. Let me ask you this. Aren't there situations where you have somebody with, say, a 250 cholesterol reading, and it's not high for them? On the other hand, you might have somebody with a 160 cholesterol reading, and that's too high for them. Yeah, I suppose that's possible. So I said, okay, is there a way to find out if I'm one of those individuals that can have, or that would tend to have, a higher cholesterol rate? He says, well, actually, there is a way. So I had to do a test. It's almost like an MRI. I had to go on a machine and to lay there for a while. And I guess what they do is they scan your arteries. And it came back with a 0. And I said, what does that mean? He says, you have 0 clottage, just made up a word, huh? You have 0 clots in your system. I'm like, really? I go, but I thought a high cholesterol number meant that I would have clogs or clots in my system. I said, no, you're clean. So he said, for you, you're one of those that, you know, with the 220 to 240 cholesterol level, you're fine because you're not at risk based on your scan. I'm like, good. Okay, so that took that off the table. My A1C got taken off the table. So what's the common denominator here? It's that I do intermittent fasting, and every once in a while I do a complete fast, and I try to do a multi-day fast. So I haven't gotten to the point of getting past a 3-day fast. I've done a 3-day fast, but that's as far as I've gotten. That's something that I do want to do. In fact, I want to try a week. Maybe I'll do a video documentary of it happening. But that's something that all of us should try to do. And in fact, some of us can actually go longer than a 7-day fast. Now, of course, you know, do your research on it. This is just stuff that I've kind of learned over the years about this kind of stuff. And actually, I tell you what, I've got 2 members of the academy here in Texas that have lost tremendous amounts of weight by fasting. So I've got one that went from 280, and he's a consistent 190 right now. He went from an A4, and he was kind of big in an A4 down to an A2L. I have another student who went from 310, and he's now consistently at about 175 to 180. And he went from an A4 down to an A2H. So kind of gives you an idea of the power of fasting. And their blood work is all good. They look great. They have great energy, and their body fat is way lower now. Consider getting into a fast, but before you get started on it, you know, plan it out. And also try to take some numbers, meaning get your weight and get your body fat. Now, there are a couple of ways, in fact, several ways to do your body fat. One is use those machines where you grab them and it kind of measures the electrical impulse through your body. I found that to be very unreliable. Unreliable because you go and figure out the reading. There's ones where you can step on it, and there's ones where you can grip it. You do the reading, and let's say it'll say 10% body fat. You put it down, you count to 5, you pick it back up, it'll say 13% body fat. You put it down, pick it back up, it'll say 7% body fat, which basically means it's full of right? So it doesn't matter the absolute number. The best way to know what your body fat percentage is to actually do that one where you dunk in the booth or a tub of water. You dunk in the tub of water, and that will then figure out your lean mass. They weigh you underwater, they weigh you outside the water. They can kind of do a formula and figure out what your difference is, and that's your body fat percentage. The other way, the easier, cheaper one, is to use one of these things. So this is just simply a skin fold caliper that I bought off of Amazon years ago, and it comes with a book. And what you do is you're going to measure in 4 spots. You measure your bicep, your tricep, your shoulder blade in your back, and your waist right by your belly button. And you take the sum of all the measurements, and there's a booklet here where you can then figure it out. So I just did my measurements yesterday morning, and I think I had like a 29.5, and they don't have a 29.5, but they have a 30, which is close enough. And it said that based on a 50 plus, I'm at 18.5% body fat. Whether it is or isn't true, it doesn't really matter. And the reason why is because what you're doing is you're looking for the sum of the skin fold caliper measurements. So the sum of mine yesterday was a 29.5. So what I'm going to do is once I start doing more daily, consistent fasting, then I'll start doing my measurements maybe once a week while I'm fasting. We'll see where I'm at. So I might be 29.5 this week, and by the end of next week, let's say I'm down to 27.5. So that would mean that I lost 2 millimeters total. I'll probably lose more than that, but let's say I lost 2 millimeters. So that takes me down to, let's say, 28. So that means I went from an 18.5 down to a 17.4% body fat. It's not really the absolute number that you're really thinking about. It's more the change, your rate of change. So, I lost 2 millimeters over the course of a week. Can I lose 2 more millimeters the next week after that, right? By continuing to fast. One good thing about fasting is that it puts you into ketosis very quickly. Whereas the traditional way to get yourself into ketosis is to simply just cut back on your carbs and then, wait over time for all that glycogen to be depleted, and then eventually you switch into ketone bodies, then you start burning fat. Well, it's much faster if you just get into a fast. I was told that I need to take in some minerals while I'm on a fast, which means that what I do is I have some sea salt, and with every glass of water, I mix in a tiny bit, like a couple of pinches of sea salt in there. I mean, I can barely taste the difference, but you do that 8, 10, 15 times in a day, and you'll get, a tablespoon of sea salt in you a day, which is a good amount. The thing is, when you're feeling hungry, you need to make sure that you don't eat. Instead, drink water. And you'll find that a lot of times that if you're hungry and you drink some water, you'll feel better. But keep in mind that the ghrelin, which is the hormone that comes out that makes you feel hungry, typically comes out at your normal meal times. So if you wait 30, 45 minutes past your meal time, if you can get that far, it'll be gone. And you'll find that it's actually true. And they say past the second, third day, you don't feel the hunger anymore. And then you can kind of go through it without really any problems. Just make sure to keep up your water and your minerals. I'm not recommending you to try that. This is what I do, and that's what I've been working on, and that's what's been working for me. I'm not on any medications. I'm not on high blood pressure meds. I'm not on cholesterol meds. I don't even take ibuprofen. And at 50 years old, that's actually not bad, because I got a lot of friends that I went to high school with that are all overweight and all on some kind of medication. And for me, not being on it, to me, it's a great achievement. And if you're not there, you can get there. Especially if you're already type 2 diabetic, try the fasting, because the whole thing about it is you're trying to get your insulin levels down. And the quickest way to get your insulin level down is just don't eat, right? And it's not something that we've been kind of indoctrinated to think that we need to eat 3 square meals a day, and we really don't. In fact, a lot of top athletes, they're on that OMAD diet, which is the 1 meal a day. And they just eat 1 big meal in a day, but they don't eat for the rest of the day. For 23 hours, you're not eating and you're feeding for 1 hour in a day, but make it a good meal. So anyway, go ahead and try that. And as I start to progress, I'll kind of do a quick video and I'll kind of let you guys know what's going on. So anyway, hope all is well and happy training.